There we go. That's the one I wanted. All right. Hello and welcome to the Hedonistic Way at Midday Show. I am Renee Main and I have another glorious guest for you guys today. She is effortlessly alluring. She's soft and fierce and light and dark. She's sensual and fuck off all at the same time. And she's just an all-encompassing, beautiful soul that just drops pearls of wisdom everywhere with every breath she takes. She's completely unafraid and unapologetic in who she is, and she oozes the crone and the maiden with such elegance and grace. Yet her warrior queen is undeniable. She's busting illusions and pulling us out of our fantasies. She has just become a best-selling author in 3 different countries. She has a business that runs over 4 continents. She's a business medicine facilitator. She's a spiritual teacher, a revolutionary leader in the new consciousness. So I'm so incredibly humbled to have the beautiful Sigourney Weldon on the call today. Hello, beautiful.
Hi, my love, and I'm so humbled to have received that beautiful introduction. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I love it's one of my favorite things, as I say it all the time. I love delving into whoever I'm going to have on and then just, sharing the words that come through to me. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say, sorry, that's a real gift.
Thank you.
Like your words were, when I read them last night, they were so accurate, and we haven't connected before this, so that's a real gift.
Yeah, thank you. I do feel like it's my thing to be able to do that, and it just always feels really. I don't know. It doesn't resonate if I read a generic bio of someone. It doesn't feel very honoring of I think the chemistry that we had before we even knew that we had it, and that desire for you to come on the show. So anyway, it's not about my words. I want to delve into you and everything that you are. When I was feeling into you this morning and I thought about what I wanted to ask you, is I want to ask you about, because you do really seem to just dance with the seemingly polarities so well. Like, that you're so alluring in how you show up, but yet you're also very fierce in your fuck off presence. So I wanted to ask you about your journey with the dark and what does that mean and look like for you? What have you learned from it?
Yeah, beautiful question. Thank you. So for me, the dark, I just want to speak to that briefly for a moment, because it's something that I spoke to on my call this morning, actually. Is the irony of the dark is that it's actually quite light. Yeah. So in the center of the darkness, when we sit in the center of the void, there's actually a really strong light there, and that's where I birth all of my visions and creations from sitting in that space. So it is a space of deep polarity, and a lot of people are afraid of going down there, but it's the irony is that once you do and you surrender to that, it's really beautiful. And so you'll see a lot of my branding is like really bright and colorful, and there's so much depth and color to it, but that's actually my experience of the dark. And it's almost like an ayahuasca journey. It's like when I'm sitting in this space of the dark, there's actually so much color and so much beauty and so much depth and so much it's stunning. So that's my experience of the darkness. And it's, for me, like the space of moving from the unknown. It's the space of courageously putting your foot forwards and not knowing what's there, and waiting for something to appear and knowing that you're fully held, trusted, and supported. And that's that's living from the dark.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
living from a place of full surrender and trust to knowing that you're fully held if you take that step into the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And that's just, I just thought of, and I can't even credit it because I've just been saying it for so long. And I just, if it comes in my mind, I'll credit them. um, is the difference between, pain and pleasure. And it's not until the fear outweighs the pain. Oh, sorry, it's not until the pain outweighs the fear that people will actually do something about it. And that's what come up for me then. I thought of that saying is when you were speaking then, is because, why do you think that we dread the dark so often, and why do you think it so sometimes takes us so long to go there?
Yeah, it's interesting because we dread it, and yet actually people are living in the darkness, because
Yeah.
you take that step, you actually, as I was saying before, there's actually so much light in it. Like, that's actually where we find a truth. It's where we find and connect with, like, the ecstasy of being alive, of like stepping fully into the mystery, and like, learning to be held by that. That's actually where there is so much beauty and expansion. But yeah, so I'd actually reframe it and saying a lot of people are actually like living in the dark. They're living in a place of closure to actually their full potentiality and what they can experience. But it is exactly that. I think it's, people are scared of it because it is scary. Like, when you're walking that path, you're living every day like feeling and being connected to fear, because you don't know what's ahead of you, and so people want to experience that.
Yeah, I really love what you say there, is because it is just a perception, isn't it? Like, it is really just a mask. That the truth is that in everyday life, like, it's bringing people so much darkness. And if someone's like feeling like listening to this and going, oh crap, like this is, and I think a lot of us right now are experiencing this. What would you say to those people who are dancing in this misperception of their current reality, and afraid to go there, but realizing that, hey, I'm actually already in the darkness. I've got nothing to friggin' lose. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I guess that's a really good question. Thank you. What would I say to them? It's such a tricky one, because it's such an individual journey. And I was sharing this with someone yesterday, in that, like, my journey of moving through like an intense period of mental health issues when I was younger, because I was so I like, when my creativity is shut down, I go into such a dark space. When I can't fully like allow myself to move from the way that I'm designed to, I experience a really intense darkness. And I journeyed with that from the ages of 15 to 23. And I actually navigated myself through that without any support, and was really beautifully guided by my inner world. And I always had this compass, this inner compass that I connected to. And so it's like knowing that there's something internally, like if you trust and surrender and go inside of yourself and you ask for answers, like they will always provide you with answers. There's something greater than yourself that's always there, that's always supporting you, that wants to support you. And trust that, and learn to go inside of yourself, learn to close your eyes and ask, and allow yourself to be held by something greater than you, and surrender. And something will always reveal itself. It's been my experience.
Absolutely. And I knew it's my radar that I can pick up on, because I had that feeling again when I was thinking about you, is what happened to her? What happened to her? What is her story? What is her journey? Because I don't know how old you are, but like, you're quite young, but you've got this old wisdom
Mhm.
that you carry that's unshakable and undeniable. So can you speak of the fact, because I mean, man, like had to ask my daughters yesterday how old I was because I'm trying to go, hang on, how old am I? Like for most of my life, I've had this shakable relationship with who I am and being courageous enough. And albeit I like a lot of people would see me for being confident and out there, but quietly on the inside it was this like dance with who I am and how I show up. So I want to ask you, how did you get to that point where you are unafraid and unapologetically you as you are in that moment?
Yeah, I just want to speak to, like you were saying, like it feels like I have an ancient wisdom. I have a Venus in Capricorn. I was basically born into this world with like such, I would sit in the playground while other kids were playing, and I would be doing mudras and meditating.
Wow.
Like from
Yeah.
the age of like 6, and so I've always felt like very estranged from the world in that respect.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it feels like I've never really had a choice. I feel like the amount of life force energy and power that's in my system, like the amount of energy that I hold,
Yeah.
doesn't give me a choice to suppress it. Like it's really loud, it's really strong. As a at school, I would never be sitting still. Like I'd always be moving and dancing and performing, and like I couldn't sit down and learn. And I actually, like, if I sat there, I would end up like either anxious or jittery, or I couldn't concentrate, ADHD, pathologize it if you want, but it's just that I have this immense amount of creative energy.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like I pay the repercussions myself if I suppress that, because it creates a lot of inner turmoil. It creates mental health issues for me.
Yeah.
And so I don't have any choice but to fully honor and respect and love that part of myself. And so the non-apologetic nature of who I am comes directly from that experience of inner suffering that comes from suppressing it.
Yeah.
That's really my drive.
Yeah. What is your, for such a young age, knowing that, you're sitting there meditating at the age of 6 and feeling, I can't remember the word that you used, but I want to say like foreign in terms of everyone else that was what got going on around you, and correct me if that's not the right way that you felt.
Bit estranged, but that's
Estranged, yes, sorry, that's right. Feeling estranged, but also I'm assuming like so deeply connected at the same time. I want to speak of that, to that journey from 15 to 23 where you were at one of your darkest moments when that creativity was suppressed. Was there something that happened? What was that anchor or journey within you during that time?
yeah, it was interesting because it was on my 15th birthday that I just woke up and I felt different.
Right.
And I've now learned that I had a really strong Pluto transit happening at that time for those years.
Yeah.
So it was something far greater than myself, and it landed on my 15th birthday, and it finished on a birthday as well. Yeah. Yeah, so it was very divine, and it was really an initiation into experiencing the depths of darkness and learning how to self-hold and to self-assure myself and to create that, like comforting inner voice and like become my own mother, my own father, like the carer to my inner child that was petrified, and to learn how to actually heal myself so that now I can actually do that for others from a space of really having been in the darkest space of despair and like grief and
That's huge. And that's, now I get the being able to be in your crone and your maiden at the exact same time, because that is an absolute gift to be able to, hold that all at once. Yeah, so now I get that, and I deeply resonate with that as well. I had another question in there. Is when you talk about holding yourself from such a young age, like, and is that something that you were guided to do, like externally? Did someone, like, I'm curious as to your parents or your mentors, or did someone help you navigate that? Because that's a tricky ass path to navigate, especially for someone so young.
Yeah, it is. And no, I didn't. I didn't have
Wow.
a mentor till I was about the age of 24.
Yeah.
When I discovered this woman that was running a spiritual center in Geraldton, my hometown.
Yeah.
Like
I
a
know
donation.
Geraldton.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
It's a donation. It's not there anymore, but it's a donation-based healing center, and yeah, I started like running energetic healing sessions from that space and like learning under her and mentoring her, and she became my guide for a few years. But before that, no, it's something that kind of just came to me and was an innate gift. Like I connected to, I would say it's like divine mother energy. It's like that divine mother archetype, like that earth holding that there's something of great, like greater than yourself holding you and speaking to you. I always felt connected to that energy the whole journey, and it always felt safe and it always felt supported, even though I'd had no prior understanding of like or any spiritual context to what I was going through. Like I felt like I was like I never fought it. It wasn't something that I was like, what's happening? Like what's, I felt very, very held. So
That's huge. And that's, what would you say to someone who's not feeling held or supported? And we spoke, briefly about people right now feeling like they don't have their freedom.
yeah.
And so what would you say to them about how they're feeling in that right now?
I mean, just speaking to the freedom piece, it's like no one can ever take your freedom away from you. That's a feeling and an anchor point that, and a reference point inside of yourself that you can find no matter where you are. Like I'm in a room. I've been locked in a room, not locked, I shouldn't say that, sounds horrible. But I got back from San Francisco and I had to go into 14 days of self-isolation.
Yeah.
So I've been blocked off from the rest of the house, been fed food over like this like counter, and like been in this one room for like 14 days. And being so tapped into like my creative flow and like being able to have a space that allowed me to do my practices that allow me to open my body to experience that state of freedom within. I don't feel like I've had my freedom taken away from me. There was times where I did and I felt the emotion fully and I ran it through my body and I used the tools that I teach people to like express and sound and move energy through me, and then it's gone. It doesn't like remain with me. But freedom is a state of being. It's not anything external to you. It doesn't like, it's not interdependent on your external circumstances, but we just don't know how to free up our energy body and our field and to actually have that felt experience of freedom. So that's what I'm passionate about teaching people.
Yeah, that's so, it is. It's so, so true. And I feel like, as soon as we think that someone else has taken our freedom, like we've just completely surrendered our power and given it away,
Yeah.
to someone else. So how can people begin to, you spoke so beautifully about opening that up, opening up that energy and letting it move through you. How can people begin to activate them and cultivate that inside of them right now?
Yeah, beautiful. So practices like shaking.
I love shaking.
Yeah, putting on some music and just allowing your body to just shake.
Yeah.
I was teaching this morning gibberish. Like
Oh.
allowing your sound to run, like and just like allowing your tongue to go and just starting to speak in gibberish. That basically confuses the mind because it's illogical and the mind likes to like make sense of everything.
Yeah.
So it's like doing something that's nonsensical, like even moving in a way that's weird and that you normally wouldn't. That's not like you're not thinking about it, you're just letting your body move. So shaking or like making weird sounds, even like getting in your animal body, your primal, waking up your primal body. So Through dance. So sounding as you dance.
Yeah.
Anything that gets you out of your head and allows the pure expression of emotional energy to move through you and animate you will give you that taste of freedom that you're associating elsewhere.
I love that. And that's so many of, I used to act for really and study acting for a really long time. And so many of the practices that always kind of go back to like speaking gibberish. I'm like, we did that at NIDA, like when I was like 15, 16, you know, and there's so many great practices that are like, you know, kind of theatre sports that actually absolutely change that state for you. So I really love what you speak of there. I want to then ask you about, you speak about movement and sound and that animalistic movement, and allow that to move through us. And I really admire that you touch on that, because I feel like so many people who speak about spirituality really separate that primal animalistic innate trait that we all have, and talk about that as our survival, you know, instinct, and how it's like the lowest form or the entry form and all of these things. So I really want to hear your thoughts on that and how you see it. And then also, because I kind of feel like then that's a natural evolution into wild grace. So then if you could speak of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's also what I speak about heavily in my book, my new book that I've just published, Leviathan.
Leviathan. I wasn't sure how to pronounce it, so thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no worries. It's a bit strange because the original word that it's derived from is Leviathan.
Yeah.
That's documented in the Bible and the Gospels, the Book of Amos and whatnot. So I've just actually changed it slightly. It's a bit of a strange one, but yeah. So it's interesting. I speak about it in terms of like the chakra system in my book.
Yeah.
So if you know the chakra system, it's one of the most basic energetic models of the body, the 7 chakra system. And they speak about like there's the root chakra, the earth chakra, which sits at the base of our spine, and then the crown chakra at the top of the head. And so if we look at consciousness-based teachings, they're really based like upon throat and above. Some of them hard as well, but experience more like higher expanded states of consciousness and awareness and meditation practices that still the mind. But what that does is actually separates you from your animal body, primal self. And there's 2 forms of Kundalini energy. It's like a lot of people are just harnessing and working with Kundalini Shiva, which is that the light energy that you can create and with like consciousness-based teachings. But we've also got Kundalini Shakti, which lies at the root of the base. And if that's suppressed, and if your animal body's suppressed, then actually that creates a lot of chaos in the body, creates a lot of emotional tension, can create mental health issues because it can create anxiety and repressed creativity, which creates like almost like a neurosis, and Freud speaks of this. So it actually is like suppressing a part of ourselves that then actually feeds back and creates like more tension in the mind, because the mind is just a reflection of the body, right? And vice versa. And so people are trying to meditate to escape this like feeling of like having, you know, all of these thought patterns happening, and yet like the thought patterns are a direct reflection of the fact that the body has so much energy and repressed energy in it. And so they're fighting like this battle that they're not going to win. But basically it's really simple. If you learn how to unlock that Kundalini energy through really simple practices, and then that energy actually moves through the body and then actually quietens the mind naturally. So it's another pathway to expanding consciousness that people have forgotten about, or, you know, it's not as broadly acknowledged.
That's so true. I really love how you describe it, and thank you. That's beautiful. I want to hear more about your book. But is that then the essence, you know, that Kundalini Shakti, like is that the essence of wild grace? Like, what is wild grace and how did it come about?
Yeah, so Wild Grace is like a culmination of my 8 years body of work of, studying various different energetic medicines. I'm studying down the shamanic path, the tantric lineage. It kind of brings a lot of different ancient medicines together and combines it in a formula, which we work through the elements over 7 days through the chakra system.
Yeah.
And then at each level, we're invoking that different the element and associated archetype, and also the different embodiment practices that actually help to awaken the energy that we're working with. Yeah. So like earth element, we're invoking Kali, we're working with tremor release and different practices to awaken Kundalini. Say at the level of the solar plexus, we're working with the warrior archetype. We're working with boundaries and practices that strengthen discipline, and so we move through the 7 different chakras, and it's a journey.
Beautiful. And tell us about the book that you had. Was it last week?
It was only a week ago.
Oh, yeah. It was such a beautiful it was such a beautiful thing to witness, as well as your journey through that. So tell us about the book and tell us.
Yeah, sure. So the book Leviathan, as I was saying, is derived from the word Leviathan. And interestingly, this book came through basically when the first cases of coronavirus started. That's when the idea landed back in December.
Yeah.
And it was birthed through really strongly. So it came through and I wrote it within a month.
Wow. It's a lot of words.
Hey?
It's a lot of words.
It's a lot. I actually wrote the majority of it in a week because I was in a book writer's retreat for a week. So.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. But I finished it and I just like, there's this urgency to get it out like ASAP.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the energy that was moving through me at the time, I was speaking a lot to this revolution and like basically like needing to self-hold and that it was going to be difficult and all of this stuff that I kind of didn't, I was almost prophesizing. Like I was like, I was writing and a lot of the time I was actually learning from the words. I was like, okay, this is interesting. I didn't fully understand it until the coronavirus hit and I was like, whoa, this book, people need this book. Like it's speaking exactly to what's happening. So that was really powerful. And interestingly, the last, like in 1918, the last pandemic was actually brought to America through a ship called Leviathan. So, yeah. And I didn't know what this word was. Like I just saw it scribed in my mind in meditation one day, and that's why I called it that. I had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Because it's a word I've never heard of it before. So I was like, what is that word? How do you pronounce that word? And I was really wondering about the meaning of it and where it came from. So, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I kind of get the sense that, like, you yourself are going through we're all going through, evolution. But I feel like there's a real shift in where you're going and what's coming alive in you right now. So I want to ask you about that. What's alive in you right now? What is this shift that I'm feeling?
Yeah, interesting question because it's definitely you're accurate. I feel like I'm in the middle of it, so I haven't quite made sense of it fully.
Yeah.
I'm trying to interpret it with my mind, but my mind just has no idea what's going on. Like it's fully illogical, and I'm not entirely sure. I know I'm going through a massive pivotal shift, because I've felt out of alignment with a lot of the way that I have been doing things, and I know that I'm moving somewhere new, but I just don't know what that space is yet because it hasn't opened up for me. But I believe it's to do with my writing and stepping into full-time work.
Yeah. What wasn't feeling aligned? into, you don't need to speak of like the actual things, but what was the feeling that felt not aligned or in integrity?
Yeah, like the branding, I guess, of being a healer doesn't feel accurate to me anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a byproduct of what I do anyway, because I am innately and naturally a healer, but I'm not healing anyone. I'm tapping people into their creative genius.
Yeah.
That naturally will like overcome any problems with like that people have, that, you know, pathologies, illnesses. Like I've come from a medical background, been in that healing space for like a decade. And actually what I've seen directly and what my lessons have been is that like when you tap into this super consciousness and this creative genius space and you live from that space, it like it overrides any perceived problems. Like there's nothing to fix.
No.
Like,
You're not broken. There's nothing to heal.
No. And so I'm stepping away from that whole paradigm. You know, I've felt this real calling to step away from a lot of communities.
Yeah.
And to just step fully into my genius, which is writing and speaking. And it's going to look a little bit different. So.
Beautiful. When you do that, and I'm just speaking directly to, and I'll just own it, is because often I do that and then I get this sense of, and it actually come up, was it last week or the week before? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's, you know, do you get that sense of like, I'm shifting and I'm pivoting, and then, you know, and then you're separating yourself, you know, certain communities no longer feel as congruent as what they used to. Do you ever get that sense then of, where do I fit in? Like that sense of belonging?
All of the time. All of the time. All of the time. Yeah. Totally.
What do you do when you feel that?
Well, for me, it's like I don't really feel, I've never had one community. Like I've always moved between different communities. I'm like a full shapeshifter, so I love experiencing different people, different flavors, dipping my toes in and getting out. Like I don't have, and I never have really, apart from when I was 21 for a couple of years, I had a community. But other than that, I've always kind of been a bit of a free spirit and like to have a bit of a global network and move between different communities. So for me, it's like I don't perceive it to be an issue.
Yeah. And that's, thank you. That's, I feel like, you know, and I feel like that's going to come up more and more for us as well, is because so many people are taking the pivot because they're taking time to take stock of what's going on. And, you know, I think that sense of belonging is going to be a real thing that we're going to see more and more of in the next time as this unfolding continues to happen. There was something there that I wanted to ask you. So, yes, I'm curious to ask you about your perception about business. I've read a couple of things that you've said online and how you guide people. And I know Reese speaks of you so highly, and he was on the show a few weeks ago, and I'm a lot in love with that man, that person, that human. He's such a beautiful soul. Yes, yeah. And like you do have this effortless kind of vibe that I pick up on, that, you know, like people want to work with you, they gravitate towards you, you're very magnetic. What is it about what you do that makes it so appealing?
Yeah, so different clairvoyants have different gifts and speak to different like, you know, some people are like working with the angelic realm and other people are speaking to the deceased, and you know, we have different gifts. My gift is to speak to people's creative entities and businesses. Like when I'm speaking to someone, I'm also simultaneously speaking to the spirit of their business. Like that comes through me so strongly because it's it's my purpose work. It's my purpose work to link people and connect people to their business identity and their creative spirit. And so, and that's what I do for myself, you know. It's like I feel like that's my genius, is my creativity, and staying tapped into that and birthing some pretty amazing, epic, creative magic into the world. And so that's what people seek from me, and I feel like that's
So then if someone's got, say, for example, it might be like a traditional business route or decision or something that, you know, whether it's a modality or a module, or even though it's like, but what did I actually want to ask in that? Why is it so important that people actually connect to that creative spirit and that business entity as an entity, and not just something that they do, a vehicle to make money?
Totally. Well, I don't think that we can live without that integrity piece anymore. I feel like that's a lot of what's like dying at the moment in society. So it's becoming more and more important because it's the way that we're going to sustain ourselves. And it's the most sustainable way of doing things, because when you live from that space, you're actually being fueled by your creations, and they're coming from like divine intervention. And that's why I don't have to do much, because it's like naturally coming from that space. And so people feel that. And also, what was I going to say? I feel like there was something more to the question. Like, oh, hang on a sec. Hang on. So I haven't had a business mentor for 2 years, right? Like, I actually have never had a business mentor. So I've created a huge systemized business that like has all of the foundations in place. You know, I've like gotten lawyers, I have all of the contracts written, I run like a professional business, and I do things properly. Because that was something that irked me also in spiritual communities, seeing that things weren't being run properly. And I'm like, I'm a businesswoman, you know, I still love, I bridge the worlds. Like, I love doing things properly and having foundations in place. And I want to affect people that don't have, you know, connection to maybe these spiritual spaces, or like don't, I want to like make my work more approachable, basically. And so I've built this over the 2 years with no mentor at all. Like, technically I shouldn't have known what to have done. Like, no experience, no business background. But the reason I've been able to do it is because I've worked with deep quantum processes that have shown me exactly what I need to do. Like, I actually see it, you know, like at the start of this year, I saw this number, and then a week later I was like, what is that number? I inquired. It's like, you're running an apprenticeship, it's a year long, you do it like this. Like, it all came through to me. So it's like, I just set it up and I ran it. But like, people are thinking about what to do, but I don't think up these things, I receive them. And so that's the difference. It's like, I'm in this mode of receptivity where I'm working with all of these rituals and practices that take me into this mode of receptivity. And this is the way of the feminine. She's receptive. And then I action. But it's coming from a space of deep intuition. And actually, I've tried to do things any other way and it doesn't work for me. So I don't have any choice. But that's like, if there's a block, it's because there's a block in you listening to what actually wants to come through, and you're trying to forge your own path and do things the way you think you need to be doing them. And that's a lot of, like, I've worked with high-end entrepreneurs who have massive businesses and who are very logical and structured. And sometimes it's just a matter of me going, like, that one small thing needs to change, and it changes the whole of their business. So it's like, sometimes it can be something really simple that I see, and it'll entirely shift things for them.
How can people begin to recognize that shift in that, you know, I love what you say there, you know, forging your own path or whatever that is looking like. How can they begin to actually sit with that and listen and open up that line that you speak of?
Yeah, so firstly, it's just noticing when things aren't working. It's like, if you're having to push to make things happen, It's like, why are you having to push so hard? You know, sometimes it does need willpower, but that's different to like having to push and things not working and still pushing and showing up and burning yourself out. So it's like, if things are really hard, then there's not that space of like you're not creating from a space of receptivity. And so what then it is a calling to do is some of the practices I teach you in the book, but also like, having a meditation practice or some kind of meditative, I like to use meditative movement or like some kind of body mind practice, because that links the two. And even like, you know, having tantric self-pleasure practices, or if you're a woman, like a yoni egg practice, and just practices that actually release tension from the body and allow you to come into deep rest, like nervous system rest. In that state, the parasympathetic rest state, which is what my modality is all about, but it's in that state that you can actually tap into quantum states and hear your intuition. So that's when it can land. So it's like, if you're pushing, then it's a sign that you need to step back and rest and do some of these practices, and that's when you'll receive what it is you need to
So true.
change, and then you can action from that place of divine intervention, and that's when something becomes effective and magnetic. And
I love that. And that's how then, if there was that, you know, you spoke about how, you know, forging it and forcing it and all of these things, and then you spoke about, you know, and it was very hard, but that's different to willpower. How, if someone's going, is this just really hard, or actually do I need a bit more of a backbone and more willpower? How do people know the difference between whether they're pushing shit uphill or whether they actually just need that to activate and embody that willpower?
For me, it's like, if I've had a clear message that I need to do something, then if I'm showing up for it and there's resistance, it's still willpower, because I know, like, I've been given a clear sign that I was meant to do it. If, for example, I was like putting a program out there and I'm showing up for it and I'm putting it out there and I feel like no one's coming at all, sometimes it's good to like do like an energetic clearing process where you like clear the emotional blocks in your system and then checking in again, and then maybe that's enough to clear it. If it's just not working, it's like you're putting all of this energy and focus into this thing and like nothing, no one's being magnetized to it, then there's clearly some kind of like, it's not right. Because if something's right, in my experience, like if something is like been gifted to you and is right and is going to impact people in the way that it needs to, it will, like, the people can feel that, you know. So first of all, I always like to differentiate. I will always do an emotional clear and just check to make sure it's not my emotional subconscious blocks like limiting me. And if I've done a clear and it's still not working, I'm like, okay, you know, like there's clearly something more to this. So I always kind of make sure that I'm like decoding it a little bit before I give up on something, and I'm like, okay.
Beautiful. I love that. And yes. I did want to ask you something else. 2 years ago, like, what happened? Like, there was, I feel like just something just landed and went for you, and shit just started to happen. And I could be totally wrong. So, but I'm curious to hear about that.
No, that's exactly what happened. It correlated exactly with when I went into my Saturn return. If you know anything about Saturn return, if you know anything about having a Saturn return in Capricorn in the 6th house, you'll know that it's brutal.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like that's in my house of career and service. I just got hit one day. I started bleeding and I fell asleep listening to this one particular song that I always listen to that takes me into lucid dreaming states. I turned it off and I left my headphones in, and at 3 o'clock in the morning it turned itself back on, and I just had this massive, I woke up in this state of like just deep activation, and I just streamed through and saw this whole vision, which was Wild Grace. Just playing out for like 2 years to come, and I saw it all. and that was it. The next week I booked in for like a shoot and to create some video footage and launched it straight up. Like 2 weeks after, I was like advertising that I was running events and trainings. They just started filling, and it just went from there. Like it was really quick.
Yeah.
And I think that's the power of implementing things as soon as they come through.
Yeah.
While the power and the life force is behind that creative entity, while it's there, if you move with it, it's just you're gonna be supported. If you hesitate, then it loses its power, and you may as well let it go and move on to something else.
How sometimes, like, I feel that sense of urgency and that, like, that inspired action, and so I do it, and then there's other times where it's like, I just need to, like, let it just sit and percolate a little bit more. How do you know when is a time to take action and when is a time to actually just sit with it, and the best way to honor it is to just spend some time integrating and embodying? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, well, I think I just move with the energy. So like when I'm feeling that hit, I move with that. If I'm feeling like there's nothing coming through, well, I'm doing practices still to keep my animal body awake. That's something I was also saying on the call today, is like not doing your emotional tools and release practices like when you're feeling emotional, but doing them every day to keep your channel clear, so that actually if there is creative energy there, which starts down in our primal centers and with our libido being active, if there's creative energy wanting to be utilized, then you actually have access to that. So it's like a daily and like emotional hygiene practice to keep that creative energy running. And if that's unlocked and moving, and you don't have that deep inspiration, and you are intuitively feeling to rest, then that's like, yeah, I would rest. But I know when something comes through, it's like really loud and like strong for me. So I just,
Beautiful. How do you do a few different things, so you've got Wild Grace happening, and then you've got, all of your facilitator stuff happening, and the business stuff and everything else. How do you do all of it all at once well?
Yeah, I'm like someone that has a lot of different creative projects on the go. And if I'm just doing one thing, I get very bored very quickly. So, and it actually keeps the energy flowing between them. Because if I'm trying to just focus on one thing, I actually probably don't end up, I usually procrastinate anyway, so I could be doing something else, But if I like move between them, then it actually provides more fuel, because I'll get a little bit sick of that one, so I'll go back to that one. So it allows me to actually have more energy for my different creative projects and show up for them even more strongly, is my experience. So I have a temple called Asatara, which has a number of different offerings under it. The Wild Grace movement, the Initiatress, which is my body work training, the Dark Drip, which is my podcast being released soon, and my business mentorship. And then I also have my own personal brand where I do my business summoning sessions.
And that's a lot. And that's, I think that how I feel like that there's I can feel my mind racing, and I want to say 50 different things at once. So I'm just going to try and slow down a little bit so they actually come out in a way that makes sense. I feel like that there's certain people that run and flow better when they've got that, when they're fluid and they're flexible in order to move between creative projects. And then there's some people that, will get into that freeze state, and they'd go into overwhelm. So there's one, that one thing that that they go down. And how do people begin to work out, okay, like, if I do this, if I take on too many projects, am I actually self-sabotaging?
Totally.
So how do people navigate that?
Totally, yeah. Like we're all different. We all have different creative archetypes. Like this is by no means the way that a lot of people would create. it's very much so the magician archetype actually. But knowing your blueprint, knowing your astrology, knowing your gene keys, knowing your human design, like knowing your blueprint and what you're here to do and how you're meant to do it is so helpful as like, yeah, from understanding you from a soul point of view. So that's like, I know my blueprints. I love gene keys and I love astrology, and they've been really powerful tools, not for implanting ideas, but for just like kind of showing me what I already know to be true for myself. And being like validation, basically. So those things are really helpful. But yeah, it can totally be a distraction, and it can totally be something that like distracts you from committing fully to something. I hear you. I don't feel like that's the case for me, because I have committed entirely to, you know, the Wild Grace for 2 years, and I still put so much energy into that, but actually it helps me to keep showing up for that when I have these other projects. So it's like, it helps me to commit. If it didn't, then that's when I'd be like, okay, Sigourney, like maybe you're self-sabotaging here.
Pull it in, and I think as well as sometimes, you know, I know it's there's been times throughout, you know, you might be one kind of type of person, but then there's been times in my life where I'm like, okay, I feel to do this and have more of an omni kind of presence, you know, lots of different projects happening. And then it's been times where I'm like, no, you know what, I really just need simplicity right now. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about, you know, having that personal brand and being honest with where we're at. And just, honoring what comes through. So thank you for speaking to that, because I think that probably speaks to a lot of people, you know, and I'm one of those people who, you know, I get really bored really quickly, and my business is very different in the space of 13, 14 years. You know, so now it's completely unrecognizable. And if someone had have said to me 14 years ago, this is what you'd be doing, I would have like thought that they were just batshit crazy.
Yeah. Like,
I want to begin to wrap up, but there's two things that I just want to say. So, your book, how can people watching this support you right now in continuing to do this amazing work? And the second and final question is, what is turning you on right now?
yeah, awesome questions. So if you feel drawn to my book or any of the work that I do, come and check me out. Check out my website, www.theasatara.com, which is the temple that houses all of my offerings. Check out my Facebook and my Instagram. So Sigourney Belle on Instagram, the Wild Grace Movement on Instagram, and Wild Grace and Sigourney Belle on Facebook. Actually, I think it's Sigourney Belle Asatara. Yeah.
Can I ask you, what's Asatara mean?
Yeah, so it is a name that came through with a good friend of mine, Aryan Light. Ceremony. It was not only last year. It means cosmic light. It's the energy that I work with that's infused into all of my different creations, but it also means war, which is quite interesting, because a lot of people have visions of me, and they say they feel like the vision is me going to war, and I have the same vision of me going to war a lot. And for me, it's my war on consciousness, and probably war is not quite the right word, but I do have this feeling of war in me a lot, of like I'm here to show up for something really big because I want to create massive impact, and it's almost like that feeling that drives me. And I feel like Wild Grace is in a way, I've said this before, but it's like this army of women that are like, we're here to change and shift consciousness through like teaching, you know, a different way of doing things. So yeah, it's funny that it means cosmic light and war.
That's amazing, and that's something that, and I didn't actually speak of that, so I wonder if we could just do that perhaps quickly, because your image is spectacular. Like, it is beautiful, and it tells a story. It's fierce, and that warrior queen is like fierce and alive in you. So is that just that war consciousness that you're speaking of, or what is that, and where does it come from?
Yeah, it's like I'm here to fight for what I believe in.
Yeah.
Like I would die like for this, like for love, basically, is to like fight for love.
Yeah. Is that the one thing that everything that you do comes down to?
Yeah, ultimately, yes. Yeah, for freedom, I should say freedom as well. People's sovereignty and freedom. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's your next photo shoot, is to like go to Scotland and do the Braveheart, like.
No, it's already there. I've spoken to one of my the women on my team. Actually, she's a photographer, BMaz. She wants to shoot me in Scotland with a sword, and I'm gonna get like chains and like a shield. It's gonna be amazing. Yeah.
That's the first thing. That's the first imagery I seen when you just spoke.
Did you?
Yes.
Yeah, because we're actually going to do it over in the UK. Like I was meant to be running a training there next month, which I can't anymore, obviously. But that was all planned.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. Look at that. That's cool. I love Bee's work. It's just, I will have a photo shoot with her one day. Her work is stunning. It really is. Yeah. So yeah, let's finish up with one final question. And what is turning you on at the moment?
What's turning me on at the moment? Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a really good question, actually. I'm a bit of a flirt, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just liking this space at the moment. Like, I've got a few little conversations going on that are like quite fun, and yeah, flirting. That feels really weird to say. I don't know why. In terms of my creations, I've got this really, really exciting project happening where I'm like collaborating with a lot of amazing like evolutionary leaders, and to create what's called the House of Holy, which is going to be like recreating the Sunday church experience, but as like a deep shamanic journey.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and we're going to be offering that once a month starting in August, the day after the Lionsgate. It's going to be amazing soundscapes and a sermon, and like a woman coming in to do like hymns and channel like amazing like vocals, and like meditations and transmissions and some really powerful offerings. So that's also like getting me a little bit excited.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And that just, I think that co-creation is just, I can see more of that unfolding, in the future, and just that potency of that, and that honoring of creative expression, to honor our expansion and evolution is just such a beautiful thing. And yeah, it sounds amazing. It really does. Cool. And I think fun and flirty as well. Like that, like I think it's like it's not, because it's like it just, I want to say like it cuts the tension with a knife, but it just reminds us that we're alive, and it reminds us to be present, and just that, yeah. That's a beautiful thing. Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And it's just been so nice to get to hang out with you for a while and get to explore and hear more about you. I love all the work that you're doing and how you're doing it and how you show up. I just think it's absolutely amazing. It's amazing to witness. It's amazing. I feel grateful that you're creating this space and this army of fierce fucking women doing really important work. So if I can help in any way, just let me know, and just keep on, just doing the work and being amazing, because it's just, it's amazing to witness. It really is.
Yeah, and thank you so much for supporting me and having me on here to share. Really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been beautiful connecting.
Has beautiful. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who has tuned in and will continue to tune in. And I'll be back next week, so I will see everybody then.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.